This was all a lie, Julius said into the microphone, and the hall erupted with applause. I stood there just below the stage, where only minutes earlier my engagement was supposed to happen. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. Julius, who was my fiancé, who promised me forever, was now smiling as if this was some rehearsed performance. Behind him stood his new boyfriend, hands wrapped possessively around his waist, like he had already won some twisted competition. I never loved him, Julius announced, and people laughed. Actually laughed. As if I was some punchline to a joke. As if my feelings, my heart, my trust, none of it mattered at all. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The hall started spinning around me in slow motion. I looked at the stage, that same stage, where we were supposed to stand together, where photographs were supposed to capture our happiness, where our new life was supposed to begin. But now there was only Julius's new love standing there, and for me there was nothing but crushing silence and unbearable shame. I pressed my hands against my chest. My heart was pounding so violently that I thought it might actually burst through my ribcage. Everything became a blur. The bright lights overhead, the faces of people I thought were friends, the voices mixing into an incomprehensible noise. I just wanted to escape, from that hall, from those people, from this nightmare that was once supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Then someone grabbed my hand. I turned around sharply. A stranger stood beside me, tall, with broad shoulders that suggested strength, dark hair that was slightly messy as if he had just come from an important meeting. His eyes held no mockery, no amusement at my pain, just depth, an understanding that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, someone in this cruel room actually saw me as a human being. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice quiet but incredibly steady, like an anchor in a storm. I couldn't form words. My throat felt closed, my tongue heavy. He didn't wait for my answer. Instead, he gently but firmly led me away from the stage, weaving through the crowd that was still applauding and laughing like this was the entertainment highlight of their evening. But this stranger didn't let me stop. He kept moving, guiding me toward the side exit where the noise was slightly muffled. I realized his hand was still holding mine. Firm, warm, real. The first real thing I had felt in what seemed like hours. "Breathe," he said softly, but commandingly. "Just focus on breathing." I did what he said, one long breath in, then another. The voices started fading into the background. The hall's chaos became distant, like underwater sounds. Only his voice remained clear, cutting through everything else. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone gentle but curious. "Mac," I managed to say, fighting to keep my voice from breaking completely. "Mac," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I'm Charles." He was still holding my hand, and in that moment, in that unfamiliar touch from a complete stranger, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope, the smallest spark that maybe I could survive this humiliation after all. The side exit led to a quieter corridor. Charles released my hand only to check if anyone had followed us. When he confirmed we were alone, he turned back to me with concern etched across his features. "Do you have someone to call? Family? Friends?" he asked. I shook my head. My family lived across the country. My friends, the ones I thought were my friends, were probably still inside, gossiping about what just happened. Some might even be congratulating Julius on his bravery for being honest. "I don't know where to go," I admitted, my voice cracking. The reality was setting in now, heavy and suffocating. The apartment I shared with Julius, the life we built, the future we planned, all of it was gone in one cruel announcement. Charles studied my face for a moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. A decision being made. "Come with me," he said. Not a question, not a demand, just an offer. "I can't," I started to protest. "You can," he interrupted gently. "You need somewhere safe right now, somewhere away from this chaos. I'm offering that, no strings attached." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of ulterior motives, any hint of danger, but all I saw was genuine concern. Something in my gut told me to trust this stranger, this Charles who appeared out of nowhere when everyone else was laughing at my pain. "Okay," I whispered. We walked through the corridor toward the back entrance. As we moved, I caught glimpses through the windows of the main hall. People were still celebrating, drinks in hand, as if nothing traumatic had just occurred. As if a person's heart hadn't just been shattered in front of hundreds of witnesses. Charles kept a protective proximity, close enough that I felt shielded but not so close that I felt trapped. When we reached the exit door, he pushed it open, and cool evening air hit my face. I hadn't realized how suffocating it had been inside until that moment. "My car is just over there," Charles said, pointing to a sleek vehicle in the parking lot. As we walked toward it, I heard the venue door open behind us. For a terrifying second, I thought Julius had followed us, that he was going to try to explain or apologize or make this somehow worse. But when I glanced back, it was just some guests leaving early, completely oblivious to my existence. Charles unlocked his car and opened the passenger door for me. I slid inside, the leather seat cool against my skin. He closed the door gently and walked around to the driver's side. Once inside, he didn't immediately start the engine. Instead, he turned to me. "I know you don't know me," he said carefully, "and I know this situation is completely insane, but I promise you're safe. I'm going to take you to my place. You can rest, figure out your next steps, and if at any point you want to leave, I'll drive you anywhere you need to go. No questions asked." I nodded, because what else could I do? I had no plan, no backup, no idea how to handle what had just happened. All I knew was that staying near that venue, near Julius, near those laughing faces, that wasn't an option. Charles started the engine, and soft instrumental music began playing through the speakers. He pulled out of the parking lot smoothly, driving with practiced ease. I watched the venue disappear in the side mirror, taking with it the life I thought I had. "Thank you," I finally said, my voice barely audible. Charles glanced at me briefly before returning his attention to the road. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Just focus on getting through tonight." And as the city lights blurred past the window, I realized that this stranger, this man named Charles, had just saved me from the worst moment of my life. I didn't know where this night would lead, but for the first time since Julius's announcement, I felt like maybe I could survive this after all. Charles drove with quiet confidence through the city streets, and I found myself studying him from the corner of my eye. His jaw was set in concentration, hands steady on the wheel. He hadn't asked me any probing questions, hadn't tried to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. That restraint felt like a gift. The instrumental music continued playing, something classical with piano and strings. It should have been soothing, but my mind kept replaying the scene. Julius's smirk, the applause, that boyfriend's triumphant expression. Each memory was a knife twisting deeper. "Where are we going?" I asked, needing to ground myself in something concrete. "My apartment," Charles replied. "It's in the downtown district. About 15 minutes from here." I nodded, watching the city transform as we drove. We left behind the event venue's upscale neighborhood and entered an area with taller buildings, more modern architecture. Everything looked expensive, polished, like a world I didn't quite belong to. "You were at the engagements," I said suddenly. "Why?" Charles's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Business connection. Julius's father is a potential client. I was invited as a courtesy." The casual mention of Julius's father sent a fresh wave of humiliation through me. His entire family had been there. They had watched their son publicly destroy me. Had they known? Had this been planned with their blessing? "They all knew," I said aloud, the realization hitting me. His family. They must have known what he was planning. "Probably," Charles said, his voice harder now. "People like that, they think humiliation is entertainment. They forget there's a real person at the center of their spectacle." I appreciated that he didn't try to sugarcoat it or offer false comfort. The truth was brutal, but at least it was honest. We turned into an underground parking garage, beneath a glass and steel tower. Charles pulled into a numbered spot and cut the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Ready?" he asked. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be ready for, but I nodded anyway. We exited the car, and Charles led me to a private elevator. He used a keycard to access it. Clearly this was a building for residents only. Probably extremely expensive ones. The elevator rose smoothly, numbers climbing on the digital display. 18th floor. When the doors opened, we stepped into a hallway with only 2 doors. Charles's apartment was apparently one of just 2 units on this level. He unlocked his door and gestured for me to enter first. I stepped inside and immediately felt out of place. The apartment was stunning, open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Modern furniture in shades of gray and white created a minimalist aesthetic that screamed sophistication. Everything was perfectly arranged, not a single item out of place. "Make yourself comfortable," Charles said, removing his jacket and draping it over a chair. His tie was already loosened, giving him a more relaxed appearance. I remained standing awkwardly near the entrance, suddenly aware of how disheveled I must look. My formal attire felt wrong now, a costume for a play that had ended disastrously. Charles noticed my discomfort. He walked to the kitchen area and filled a glass with water from a filtered pitcher. When he brought it to me, I noticed he had also grabbed a small towel. "Your face," he said gently, offering both items. I touched my cheeks and felt the dried tear tracks I had forgotten about. Mortified, I quickly wiped them away with the towel, then drank the water gratefully. It was ice cold and helped clear some of the fog from my mind. "Sit down," Charles suggested, this time more insistently. "You look like you're about to collapse." He was right. My legs felt weak, my body exhausted from the emotional trauma. I moved to the couch and sank into it. The cushions were incredibly comfortable and I found myself relaxing slightly despite everything. Charles sat across from me in an armchair, maintaining a respectful distance. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying me with those perceptive eyes. "Getting you out of there was necessary," he said. "Those people were treating you like a circus act, like your pain was something to be consumed and enjoyed. Nobody deserves that treatment, regardless of what happened between you and Julius." I looked at him, searching for any sign of judgment or pity. I found neither, just genuine concern and something else. Anger perhaps, directed at the situation rather than at me. "Why are you helping me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "You don't even know me. For all you know, I could be the villain in this story. Maybe I did something to deserve this." Charles shook his head firmly. "Nobody deserves public humiliation. I don't care what the backstory is. What Julius did was cruel and calculated. The fact that he chose such a public venue, that he seemed to enjoy the attention, that tells me everything I need to know about his character." His words were like a balm on an open wound. For the first time since Julius's announcements, someone was validating my pain instead of questioning it. "I've been there," Charles continued, his voice softer now. "Not the exact same situation, but close enough. I know what it feels like when someone you trust turns your life into entertainment for others." "What happened to you?" I asked, curious despite my own turmoil. Charles leaned back in his chair, his expression distant. "That's a conversation for another time. Right now you need to rest. Your brain is probably overloaded with everything that just happened." He stood and walked toward a hallway. "Guest bedroom is this way. There are fresh towels in the bathroom. Spare toiletries if you need them. The door locks from the inside if that makes you feel more secure." I followed him down the hallway. The guest room was simple but elegant. Neutral colors, a comfortable-looking bed with crisp white linens, a large window with curtains drawn. It felt like a sanctuary. "I'll be in the living room if you need anything," Charles said. "Anything at all. Don't hesitate." He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Mac, you're going to get through this. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you." After he left, I stood in the middle of the room, feeling the weight of the day finally crash down on me. I sat on the edge of the bed and buried my face in my hands. The tears came then, silent, overwhelming, painful. I cried for the relationship I thought I had, for the future that was stolen, for the humiliation I had endured. But somewhere beneath the pain there was a tiny spark of something else. Gratitude. This stranger named Charles had shown me more kindness in 1 hour than Julius had shown me in months. He had seen me at my absolute worst and hadn't turned away. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how I would face the aftermath of tonight. But for now, in this quiet room in a stranger's apartment, I allowed myself to fall apart. Because sometimes, falling apart is the first step toward putting yourself back together. Sunlight woke me, soft and warm against my face. For a few blissful seconds I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or why everything felt different. Then reality crashed back in with brutal clarity. Julius. The announcement. The laughter. Charles. I sat up quickly, my body stiff from sleeping in my formal clothes. I had been too exhausted last night to even change. The guest room looked the same as it had when I first entered. Neat, impersonal, safe. I checked my watch. 7 in the morning. Had I really slept through the entire night? Voices filtered in from somewhere outside the room. Or rather, one voice. Charles was on the phone, speaking in low, professional tones. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone suggested business rather than personal conversation. I stood and caught my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. I looked terrible. Hair disheveled, eyes puffy and red. Clothes wrinkled beyond repair. This was rock bottom. I thought, this is what humiliation looks like the morning after. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door and ventured out. The apartment looked different in daylight. Less intimidating, more lived in. Charles was in the kitchen area, phone pressed to his ear while he simultaneously operated an expensive-looking coffee machine. He wore casual clothes now, a gray t-shirt and joggers, and his hair was slightly damp, suggesting a recent shower. He spotted me and held up one finger, indicating he would be just a moment. I nodded and hovered awkwardly by the hallway entrance, feeling like an intruder despite his hospitality. "I understand the concerns," Charles said into the phone, his tone patient but firm. "But I need to reschedule today's meetings. Something unexpected came up." "Yes, all of them. I'll send new times by noon." He paused, listening. "I appreciate your flexibility. Talk soon." He ended the call and immediately focused his attention on me, offering a slight smile. "Good morning. Coffee? Please." I managed, my voice rough from sleep and crying. He poured a generous amount into a ceramic mug and brought it over, along with a small container of milk. "Black or with milk?" he asked. "Black is fine," I replied, accepting the mug gratefully. The warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me in the present moment. We settled onto the couch, and I was surprised to find the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. Charles sipped his own coffee, giving me space to wake up fully before launching into conversation. "Did you cancel your work because of me?" I finally asked, guilt creeping in. "I chose to," Charles clarified. "My schedule is flexible. Being self-employed has its advantages." "What do you do?" I realized I knew almost nothing about this man who had rescued me. "Business consultant," he explained. "I help companies optimize their operations, improve efficiency, that sort of thing. It pays well and allows me to control my own time." Independent, successful, and apparently kind enough to derail his entire day for a stranger. The contrast to Julius was stark and painful. Charles set down his coffee mug and leaned forward slightly. "I have your phone. You left it on the side table last night." He retrieved it from a nearby drawer and placed it on the coffee table between us. The screen immediately lit up with notification after notification. I could see the numbers climbing: missed calls, text messages, social media alerts. It was overwhelming. "You don't have to look at it right now," Charles said carefully. "But you should probably know that the situation has gained some attention." My stomach dropped. "How much attention?" "Enough that people are talking. There's apparently video footage from last night." Of course there was. In this age of smartphones, every humiliating moment could be captured and shared indefinitely. I reached for the phone with trembling hands and unlocked it. The barrage of notifications made my head spin. 37 missed calls from Julius. Text messages from people I barely knew asking if I was okay, or worse, asking for details. Social media was even more brutal. Someone had indeed posted video of Julius's announcement, and it had gone viral. The comments section was a nightmare of strangers weighing in on my failed relationship, my supposed shortcomings, Julius's bravery. One comment caught my eye. "Mac always seems so boring anyway. Julius definitely upgraded." The phone slipped from my hands, and Charles caught it before it hit the floor. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening as he read what I had been looking at. "Give it to me," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What? Why?" "Because you need a break from this toxicity. These people don't know you. They don't know what happened between you and Julius beyond a 30-second video clip. They're making judgments based on entertainment value, not reality. And right now you don't need that poison in your head." I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle it, but the truth was I couldn't. Just those few minutes of scrolling had made me feel worthless. Like maybe Julius had been right to humiliate me. I handed over the phone. Charles immediately powered it down and locked it in a drawer. "You'll get it back when you're ready. Not before. What if something important comes up? Then it can wait. Your mental health is more important than being accessible to people who only want gossip." His protectiveness was surprising and strangely comforting. Julius had never been protective of me. He had always been more concerned with appearances, with what others thought. "I need to go back to the apartment," I said suddenly. "Julius isn't mine. I need to get my things." Charles nodded. "We'll do that today. But first, you need to eat something." "When was the last time you had a real meal?" I tried to remember and couldn't. Yesterday had been a blur of preparation and nerves. "Yesterday morning maybe?" "Not acceptable," Charles declared, standing up. "Breakfast first, then we'll deal with the apartment situation." He moved back to the kitchen and began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. Eggs, vegetables, bread. Within minutes he was cooking with practiced efficiency, and the smell of food made my stomach growl despite my emotional turmoil. "You really don't have to do all this," I said, feeling increasingly guilty about disrupting his life. Charles cracked an egg into the pan with a satisfying sizzle. "I know I don't have to, I want to. There's a difference. But why? I'm literally a stranger you met during the worst moment of my life." He turned to face me, spatula in hand. "Maybe that's exactly why. Sometimes strangers can help in ways that friends and family can't. We don't have preconceived notions. We don't have history clouding our judgment. We can just see a person who needs help and offer it without strings attached." "That seems too good to be true." "Maybe," Charles acknowledged, returning to his cooking. "Or maybe you've just been surrounded by the wrong people for too long." He plated the food perfectly, scrambled eggs, sautéed vegetables and toast, and brought it over. We ate in companionable silence, and I was surprised to find I actually had an appetite. The food was delicious. Simple but well prepared. After breakfast, Charles cleared the dishes and then turned to me with a more serious expression. "Are you ready to go get your things? Or do you need more time?" I thought about it. Facing that apartment, facing the memories, potentially facing Julius. None of it sounded appealing, but it was necessary. I couldn't move forward while my entire life was still tied up in that space. "I'm ready," I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "Good, but we're doing this on your terms. If Julius is there and you don't want to talk to him, we leave immediately. If it becomes too overwhelming, we take breaks. Your comfort is the priority." His consideration was almost overwhelming in itself. I wasn't used to being prioritized, to having someone care about my comfort and boundaries. "Thank you, Charles, for everything." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him seem younger and more approachable. "You're welcome. Now let's go reclaim your life." Standing outside the apartment I had shared with Julius, my heart began breaking all over again. The brick facade, the familiar entrance, the second-floor window where we used to watch sunsets together. Everything looked painfully familiar yet completely alien, like stepping into a parallel universe where this place no longer belonged to me. Charles stood beside me, a protective presence like a silent guardian. He touched my shoulder gently. "I'll wait out here. Go inside. Pack what you need quickly. If you feel uncomfortable or if he's in there, call me. I'll be upstairs in seconds." I nodded, inserting the key I still carried. The door opened with a soft click that echoed in the hallway. The apartment greeted me with eerie silence. Perhaps Julius wasn't home, or maybe he was out celebrating with his new love, toasting to his freedom from boring, predictable me. The living room looked exactly as I remembered. That couch where we had countless movie nights, where Julius would pull me close and whisper that I was his safe place. The kitchen counter where he would make morning coffee and kiss my forehead before work. Every corner held a memory, and every memory now felt like poison seeping into my mind. I walked into what had been our shared bedroom, though it was just the bedroom now, nothing ours about it anymore. I began folding clothes with mechanical precision, my hands working automatically while my brain remained mercifully blank. Emotional numbness had set in, probably a defense mechanism against the overwhelming sadness threatening to consume me. Then I noticed something on the nightstand. A photo frame. Our photo, Julius and me, smiling, embracing. taken during that trip when we promised each other forever. I picked it up carefully, studying the version of Mac in that picture. Naive, trusting, hopeful. That person seemed like a stranger now. Without thinking too much about it, I dropped the frame into the trash bin. The sound of glass cracking was oddly satisfying, like breaking the final chain connecting me to false promises. While packing my suitcase, I deliberately avoided touching anything that belonged to Julius. Not his gifts. Not that hoodie he claimed was just for me. Not the watch he gave me on our anniversary. I left everything behind. I wanted to leave with only my own identity, untainted by his memory. As I opened a drawer to retrieve important documents, I found an envelope. My name written on it in Julius's distinctive handwriting. It wasn't sealed. Curiosity won over caution. I pulled out a letter, checking the date, 3 weeks ago, long before the engagement disaster. Mac, if you're reading this, I've probably already left you. I didn't want to lie to your face because you get so emotional and I always feel guilty. The truth is, you're too good, too caring. But that's the problem. Everything with you is predictable, safe. I feel suffocated. I'm searching for something that makes me feel alive, that gives me a thrill. You can't give me that. Sorry. Predictable, safe, suffocating. Those words stabbed through my chest like daggers. So Julius had planned this. The public humiliation was premeditated. My hands began shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. I hadn't expected to feel so intensely. I tore the letter into pieces, throwing them into the trash alongside the broken photo frame. Poetic justice, I thought bitterly. I closed the suitcase and headed toward the door. Crossing the living room, I was almost free when suddenly the apartment door swung open. Julius walked in, alone, carrying grocery bags as if he was doing normal domestic chores. As if nothing catastrophic had happened. He saw me, then saw the suitcase. His face tightened with something I couldn't quite identify. Mac, what are you doing here? Collecting my belongings, I said flatly, keeping my emotions carefully hidden. Obviously, this is an overreaction. Julius set the grocery bags on the counter and approached me. We can talk about this. You don't need to move out so quickly. Quickly? I looked at him sharply. You humiliated me on stage in front of hundreds of people, Julius. You rejected me publicly like I was trash. And now you think I'll stay here and have civil conversations over breakfast? I told you I was sorry, Julius said defensively, though his eyes showed no real remorse. I was confused. Hunter? I interrupted with a bitter laugh. Your new thrill. Congratulations. I hope you found what you were searching for. Julius looked frustrated. You always do this, react dramatically without understanding the situation. You know our relationship had problems. We both knew something was missing. No, Julius. I lifted my suitcase. Only you knew. I thought we were perfect together. But you never shared your emotions, your dissatisfaction. Nothing. You didn't give me a chance to fix anything. You went straight to destroying me on stage for entertainment. That's not fair. Fair? I cut him off. What was fair, Julius? Insulting me publicly? Or maybe writing this letter where you called me boring and suffocating? I threw the torn pieces at his feet. Yes, I found it. Julius fell silent. You want to know the difference between us? I said, moving toward the door. I appreciated you despite your flaws. But you treated me like garbage. And now I'm going somewhere I'm actually respected. To someone else? Julius taunted. You moved on quickly. How desperate. I opened the door. Charles was standing outside, leaning against the wall, checking his phone. When he saw me, he straightened immediately. Ready? Charles asked. Yes. I confirmed. Julius followed me out, his face hardening when he saw Charles. Who is this? Your rebound? Charles barely glanced at him. I'm nobody who matters to you. And Mac isn't anyone's rebound. He's a person you hurt, and now I'm making sure he gets the support he deserves. Julius struggled for words, but Charles had already picked up my suitcase and gently guided me toward the stairs. We descended without looking back. I didn't turn around even once, because everything in that building belonged to the past, and I needed to look forward now. As we reached Charles's car, he loaded my suitcase into the trunk and opened the passenger door for me. Before I got in, he looked at me seriously. How are you feeling? Lighter, I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. Like I just cut off something diseased. Charles smiled slightly. That's exactly what you did. And now the healing can really begin. During the drive back to his apartment, I stared out the window, processing everything. The confrontation with Julius had been painful but necessary. I had stood up for myself, refused to be manipulated, and walked away with my dignity intact. That was growth. Thank you for being there, I said quietly. Even though you stayed outside, knowing you were close by made it easier. That's what support looks like, Charles replied. Being present without being intrusive. You handled that conversation perfectly on your own. I was just backup. When we arrived back at Charles's building, I felt something shift inside me. This apartment, which had been a temporary refuge, was starting to feel like a real sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild myself without judgment or pressure. Charles helped me bring my suitcase upstairs. As we entered his apartment, he said, "Guest room is all yours for as long as you need it. No rush to figure anything out." I nodded, feeling grateful beyond words. For the first time since the engagement disaster, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. Back at Charles's apartment, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. Unpacking my belongings, the guest room started feeling more personal, more like mine, a safe space where I could breathe without anxiety. Charles offered to make dinner and I insisted on helping. Working side by side in the kitchen turned out to be oddly therapeutic. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables, the sizzling sounds from the pan, Charles's casual humming, the comfortable silence, it all felt surprisingly normal. "Did you ever cook professionally?" I asked while dicing onions. "Never," Charles replied, stirring pasta on the stove with a relaxed smile. "But when you live alone for 3 years, you either learn to cook or become a takeout addict and sacrifice your health." I chose the first option. "Smart choice," I commented. Then hesitantly I added, "You mentioned you had a past too, 3 years ago." Charles lowered the heat on the stove and turned toward me. His name was Ryan. We were together since college, almost 5 years. I thought he was the one, the person I'd grow old with. He paused, processing a painful memory. Then one day I came home early and found him there, in my apartment, with my best friend. I was shocked. My hands stopped moving. "Charles, Nathan," he continued, the name leaving his mouth like a bitter taste. "My best friends since high school. They had been lying to me for months. Want to know what Ryan said when I caught them? 'You were always too busy for me anyway.' Like my working hard, building my career, like that justified his cheating." "That's horrible," I said with genuine sympathy. Charles nodded and returned his focus to the stove, as if cooking helped organize his thoughts. "The first few months were hell. I felt broken, betrayed. I kept wondering what I did wrong. Then I started therapy. Slowly I realized wasting energy on people who don't deserve you is the biggest mistake you can make. They stole my time and broke my trust. But I wasn't going to let them steal my future too." He served the pasta onto plates and set the table. It was a simple dinner: creamy pasta, garlic bread, fresh salad. But it tasted amazing. Or maybe I was finally able to taste food properly for the first time in days. During dinner, Charles talked about casual topics, favorite movies, music preferences, childhood memories. He deliberately avoided heavy subjects, seeming to understand that I needed normalcy and distraction. His emotional intelligence was impressive. "Do you think I can move on?" I finally asked, twirling pasta on my fork. "The way you did?" Charles set down his fork and looked directly into my eyes. "Want to know why you think you can't?" he said, leaning forward. "Because right now you feel like Julius took something from you. Your confidence, your trust, your self-worth. But the truth is, you've reclaimed yourself. You don't have to stay in a toxic relationship where you're not valued. Julius closed one door for you, but infinite windows are open in front of you now. This is freedom, Mac. It's painful and scary, but it's freedom. Embrace it." I absorbed his words. Freedom. Yes, maybe that's exactly what this was. There was fear, certainly, but somewhere deep down, there was also excitement. After dinner, we settled in the living room. Charles put on a light comedy movie. Nothing too thought-provoking, just feel-good content. I found myself laughing, genuinely. For the first time in 3 days, Charles was laughing too, and I noticed how authentic his smile was. No mask, no pretense, just real. During one scene where the protagonist confidently faced his ex, Charles shot me a side glance. "That's your future. Where does your confidence come from?" I asked curiously. "Because I'm watching you," Charles said simply. "You faced Julius in that apartment today. You told him what you deserve. That's strength, Mac. That confidence might be temporarily hidden behind pain, but it exists. You just need to discover it." The movie ended. Charles yawned. "I need to finish some work. If you need anything—" "Charles," I interrupted. "Thank you. Seriously, I don't know how to repay all this." He gave me a soft smile. "Don't repay it, just heal. Make yourself a priority. That's enough." Late that night I lay in the guest room unable to sleep. My thoughts were racing. Julius's letter, his face during our confrontation, Charles's kindness, this new chapter of my life. I got up and went to the living room. Charles was working on his laptop in dim light, wearing glasses I hadn't seen before. "Why are you still awake?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. "Preparing for a client presentation," Charles said, adjusting his glasses. Then he looked at me. "And you?" "Thinking," I admitted, sitting on the couch while maintaining some distance. "About a lot of things." Charles dimmed his laptop screen and gave me his full attention. "Tell me, do you think," I began, choosing my words carefully, "I can restart my life? Fresh. Like a clean slate?" Charles considered my question genuinely. Then he said, "Mac, your life never stopped. It just took a detour. A wrong road that led you into temporary confusion. But now you're back on the right path. And yes, you can definitely start fresh. New job, new friends, new experiences. You can be whoever you want to be without anyone's expectations holding you back." His voice held such conviction that I believed him. For the first time, the future didn't seem scary. It seemed exciting. "What if I fail?" I admitted my vulnerability. "Then you keep trying," Charles said simply. "Failure isn't the end, Mac. It's just a step. I'm here for you, not as someone who wants to fix you, but as someone who wants to stand beside you while you fix yourself." My throat tightened. "Your kindness. I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves kindness," Charles said softly, "especially people who've had it stolen from them." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Charles closed his laptop. "Let's both get some sleep. Tomorrow is a fresh start." I was turning toward my room when Charles called out, "Mac?" I turned back. "I'm proud of the choices you made today. They weren't easy." A smile appeared on my lips. A real smile. "Good night, Charles." "Good night." That night I slept peacefully. Julius wasn't in my dreams. Just possibilities. The next few days were surprisingly normal. A new kind of normal. Charles had a simple routine and he included me in it. Morning workouts. He introduced me to his gym, which turned out to be therapeutic. Healthy breakfasts. Then he'd work while I researched career options. Charles offered connections at different companies but never pressured me. He gave me space to explore while also being present when needed. The balance was perfect. I was updating my resume and refining my portfolio. Surprisingly, this process brought me clarity. While living with Julius, I had compromised my dreams constantly. Now I had freedom to make decisions on my own terms. Thursday evening, Charles and I were sitting in a coffee shop, his favorite spot. The ambiance was cozy with soft jazz playing and warm wood interiors. We were working on our laptops when suddenly my phone buzzed. The phone Charles had returned to me 3 days ago with all notifications turned off. I checked the screen. A message from Julius. "We need to talk, meet me, please." Charles noticed my expression change. "What happened?" "Julius," I showed him the screen. "He wants to meet." Charles's jaw tightened slightly, but he remained composed. "It's your decision. I won't say anything either way." But I was confused. "What do you think I should do?" "I think," Charles said carefully, "you might need closure. But if he tries to manipulate you, maintain your boundaries. You're not responsible for his guilt or regret." I nodded and replied to Julius, "Tomorrow, 4 in the afternoon, park near downtown." And this is the last conversation. The next day, I arrived at the park, neutral territory. Julius was already there, sitting on a bench. He wore casual clothes, his hair was messy and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Was this the appearance of guilt? Or actual remorse? "Mac," he said as I approached. "Thanks for coming." I stood near a fence, maintaining distance. "Talk? You have 5 minutes." Julius looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected this firmness from me. I'm sorry. Really. I hurt you. Humiliated you publicly. What happened with Hunter, that was a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated. "You stood on stage and publicly declared you never loved me, and that's a mistake?" I was confused. Julius said in frustration, "Hunter gave me attention I was craving. Everything with you had become routine." I started looking for excitement. "Routine," I said with a bitter laugh. "Right, stability and loyalty are boring compared to drama and betrayal." Julius buried his face in his hands. "Hunter left me, and there it was. The real reason. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here looking for a rebound." "So you called me here because your thrill ended?" I said in disbelief. "You thought I'd come back like some backup plan?" "No." Julius stood up. "I'm genuinely realizing your value now. You're stable, caring. Boring." I cut him off. "Predictable. Suffocating. Remember that letter?" Julius fell silent. "Listen, Julius." I took a deep breath, staying calm because I didn't want to be emotionally drained. "I can forgive you eventually. Not for you, but for myself. For my own peace. But I can never take you back. Because I deserve something real. Something respectful. Something equal. And you can never give me what I deserve. Please, Mac." "Goodbye, Julius." I turned to walk away. "You're with that Charles guy, aren't you?" Julius taunted desperately. "You moved on so quickly." I paused, turned back and said, "Charles supported me when you treated me like dirt. He gave me respect that you never did. And whether I'm with him or not isn't your concern anymore. You lost your right to be involved in my life." I walked away. Clean. Final. Charles was already home when I arrived at the apartment. He saw my face and understood immediately. "How did it go?" "I got closure," I said with a relieved smile. "Finally. Proud of you," Charles said simply. We sat in the living room. Comfortable silence. Then Charles spoke hesitantly. "Mac, I need to tell you something." My heartbeat accelerated. "Yes?" Charles set down his coffee mug and moved closer to me. "These past days getting to know you, spending time with you, I realize how special you are. Your strength, your genuineness, your kindness, everything. And I want you in my life. Permanently. Not just as a guest." I was shocked. This confession was unexpected, but not unwanted. "Charles," he gently took my hand. "I know this might seem rushed. You need time to heal, to discover yourself. And I'll wait. Months. Years. It doesn't matter. Because you're worth it. But I want you to know my feelings are real." Tears filled my eyes. But these weren't tears of pain. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude, and perhaps growing affection. "Charles," I finally said, my voice emotional, "I need you too. You supported me when the world was laughing. You respected me when I couldn't see my own value. But yes, I need time to rediscover myself, to define my identity without Julius." "Take all the time you need," Charles said, sincerity clear in his eyes. "Where am I going? I'm right here." That night, for the first time, I thought, maybe this heartbreak was a blessing in disguise. Because if Julius hadn't left me publicly, hadn't humiliated me, I never would have met Charles. I never would have discovered my own strength. I would have remained trapped in a mediocre relationship where I wasn't valued. Now I was free, healing. And beside me was someone who genuinely cared. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" Charles asked, confused. "For holding me when everyone was laughing." Charles smiled and squeezed my hand. Always. Mac's new journey had begun. And this time he wasn't alone. He had someone who deserved him and whom Mac deserved. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it wasn't scary. It was hopeful.